When you hear the sound of the bell, you know you are in the championship rounds with your boy King Amin of Essex, and I'm here with one of my favorite sparring partners, Southpaw, all the way raw. Give it to him, Mr. Mario Munguia, straight out of Tejas.
What up, champ? Happy New Year, happy holidays, all that stuff. Yeah, man, we're gonna get 2023 rocking. Am I your first guest though
You are
of the new year?
first guest of the new year, baby.
Bro, let me tell you, that's like an honor for me because I know you could have picked so many people that are talented and smart and interesting. And you came to me at a time where there's like a boxing bubble of news, right? Like, not a lot of fights been going on the last, part of the year, which is the way it goes. But all this like emotion and drama just ready to poke it and just pop it all over the place.
Yeah, man, and we're gonna get right to it. You know, I kind of titled this one under the context, what are we waiting on? And because I'm a linguist, I'm a cunning linguist and a cunning linguist.
That's what.
It's what are we waiting on,
Yo,
right?
that's fly. I might steal that one day.
Go ahead, baby. It's enough to go around, man. You my partner, right? But what are we waiting on? And I'm using the word wait, a play on that, because we're going to talk about some weight classes, but information. I don't know if we need to wait on information, but it turns out in the news just recently, Dana White, we seen what happened on New Year's, right? Feliz
New Year's,
Navidad.
yeah.
Him and his wife, they get into it. Maybe it's
In
liquor
Cabo.
involved, right? Um, and here's what I think of it. I saw the incident. I saw the way it played out. There seems to have been a quiet, if no rush to judgment at all. As a matter of fact, you see his wife come out and say, oh, he's never done this before, and blah 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 blah. And there's, like I said, no rush to judgment. And I'm wondering, what are we waiting on, right? What's your take on that part, at least?
As far as like waiting on, what do you mean? Like, as far as like what's next, or
Well, great question. Because when this happened to Ray Rice, a football player, Baltimore Ravens, right? He's out of New Rochelle, New York, running back. Him and his wife had a personal incident between the two of them. Something happened in the elevator. She insisted it was because of her intoxication, antagonism. They kind of said, unfortunately, this is our toxicity. And this guy was basically banished from football. His career was
yeah.
eviscerated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then let's talk about another interesting character that's in the news, and I'm going to tie this together. Andrew Tate.
Mm-hmm.
I seen there was a rush to judgment with him because he got taken out like the rappers. He got caught up in the RICO like he was like YSL or something. It seems as though there was no waiting. There was a complete rush to judgment, right?
Yeah.
And what I seem to base that on is I learned a few things or two. I'm a learned fellow. I found out that Andrew Tate's name is Emery Andrew Tate, and that his father kind of looks like Grady from Sanford and Son. What am I saying? Andrew Tate may not be a black man, but he seems to be a man of color.
Yeah.
Right?
I think he has a very like there's a lot of aspects to his race or ethnicity or whatever, you know what I mean, his father. So I don't know it well. I just know that he like grew up in like a weird British Columbia, like, which it's like his accent, you can kind of hear it in his accent, you know what I mean? It's like sometimes he sounds American, sometimes he sounds British,
Well,
sometimes he sounds
is a
something
funny thing,
else.
Chet. Listen, he spent a good time because his father's from outside of Illinois. He's a military brat, from what I
Yeah.
understand. But he spent a significant time outside of Illinois, right? Then he moved to England when he was about, 13, 14 years old. So again, I'm not saying, but it seems like there was no waiting around. I don't even follow that aspect of social media or anything. But when I just look at it pound for pound, it seems like there was a complete rush to judgment, no waiting, whatever the situation was. And then here you have something that is, whatever it is. And it's just kind of like, there's a lot of waiting, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah, listen, okay, I'm gonna burn here. Let's get it.
Go,
Let's
go.
let's let's use the wrist to start cooking at this point. Okay, first and foremost, the Ray Rice incident. I understand it, and I understand the point you're making, and I agree with the fact that he seemed to get canceled in a way that does not adhere or correlate with the same kind of lack of cancellations that other athletes and people have had in the past. It was something about Ray Rice. Now the video was devastating, and that was, I think, why it was so swift and so permanent, is because, you know, it wasn't just like this incident in an elevator. It was like a fucking, I mean, that dude, you can't do it on a video and then like anyone see you the same. It's kind of like Chris Brown, right? Like, we don't have any video of what he did, but we saw the aftermath, and it's kind of like it stains your head. Even if you can move on, even if you know that Chris Brown's, you know, gone through a lot of different therapeutic stuff and whatever, and is trying to grow from the situation, you just can't get out of your head. With Dana White, it's a different situation, and I'll tell you why. First and foremost, I agree. Like, look, I know you. I've known you for a long time. I know that, you know, you're man, I want to put this delicately, but like, you're a ladies man. And you know, I know you're a faithful guy and stuff, but you know, as a young man, you understand ladies, and you
Kurt
understand the
Angle,
relationship.
it's true. Oh,
It's
it's
true.
true.
Yo, and so like, you know as well as I do. Look, you're a stand-up dude. I'm sure you don't. I'm sure your morals tell you not to put your hands on a woman, or at the very least, not to use the same strength you would with a man as you would with the woman, because that's the point here. It's not like you don't ever put your hands on a woman. Like, you shouldn't, and you should avoid it. But it's like it's like Mr. Miyagi's martial arts. It's like defense only. But if a woman is hitting you, if a woman is trying to stab you, if a woman is trying to beat up your wife or your daughter or your niece, you're not going to get involved. Of course, you're going to get involved. And Dana White, in this incident, I get the backlash. I do. It was crazy what happened, but he's a trained fighter to a degree. He could have beat the shit out of his wife if he wanted. It was a fucking slap. It was wrong, but at the end of the day, I think it's between them, champ. You know what I mean? Like, the Tank situation would happen. That's different. The Andrew Tate situation, I still think that's different. I feel like both of those were situations that were given to the media. This is a situation where some dude, some Barney, some square was in Cabo, Mexico, on New Year's Eve, one of the most beautiful places. And instead of looking at the women and the drinks and the bar and the atmosphere, he's videotaping a bald 50-year-old white dude, almost in his 60s, with his wife, enjoying their time. And look, I'm not saying that it's not fair, but that's that TMZ shit. You know what I'm saying? They're going to catch you in your worst. That's what they want.
You know what? You brought up a great point. And I kind of didn't see the comparison, because I was one who waited on this on the Tank Davis situation to sort itself out. I was one who waited. And for some reason, I don't hear the apologies and the kind of people walking back their statements about Tank as loud as they were initially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, you had no visual evidence. In fact, all of that visual evidence perhaps pointed to the other parties being the aggressor. Yet you have Dana White in a situation. Again, I think it's different, but it's the same in that I just want things to be meted out equally. See, I want people to be, go ahead.
I agree. Like, I'm not putting it on Tank in the sense that it was handed to the media, just like I'm not putting it on Dana. Like, I promise you, if Tank could go back and have an extra Christmas wish, he would wish that this situation never went out in the media. If he could have controlled it, he would have controlled it. It was beyond his circumstances. I didn't tweet a fucking word. I didn't say a thing. And I saw only a handful of people reserve judgment, and they were attacked. They said, people were saying guilty or innocent until proven guilty. What do you need? And you know what they went with? They went with the evidence they did have. See, because you're right. There was no evidence on the actual case itself other than a phone call that could or could not be taken out of context. Also, a phone call in which we don't know if Tank made his own. We don't know what they were. Like, that was never proof. The proof they went on is a video that is fairly old of him grabbing his chick in an aggressive manner. And that was what they used to kind of, render him guilty. It was unfair. And here's the thing about it. I think that this all really affected Tank. You could see the emotion in his tweets. He's like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, he doesn't want people to think he's a wife beater because he's got a good heart and he doesn't want people to think this. He's a young kid with a ton of money, and those people make mistakes. People with money that didn't come up from money. And so the situation it got blown out of proportion. And again, Tank and his girl have the right to their privacy, just like Dana White and his wife in one of the worst fights that they've ever had, that was captured on media, blown up, given to the world, with their kids having to watch on, during the holidays. It's unfair to them to make this a media circus, and people who have agendas against Tank, against Dana White, against the Ray Rices of the world, against the Andrew Tates of the world, they use these things to hone in. Now, I'm not saying Andrew Tate's not a criminal, and I'm not saying that he didn't do any of the things he's done. What I am saying is that he's clearly targeted. He's clearly targeted like these other people are targeted by people that have agendas. It's simple as that.
Yeah, man. And that's a brilliant way to put it. And while we're talking about the division that is home to one Tank Davis, we're going to swing it in the direction of Shakur, because according to Bob Arum, Shakur is going to get a title shot at 135 as soon as Devin Haney vacates. So I just want to kind of kick the can around and what's happening at 135. Would that be a smart move? Is it acceptable? I know a lot of people, they detest the idea of Devin moving up without fighting the rest of 135. And of course, I take that side as well, but I understand the business enough to know that, once I got my heart set on something, the motherfucker signing the contracts could care less about it.
Exactly.
So, what do you think about what's going on? But I guess between those two visions and, Shakur perhaps getting a title shot and maybe him and Devin not necessarily crossing paths?
Yeah, listen, I remember, and I think we talked about it before, years ago. I remember Shakur Stevenson being on Sway's show. What's Sway's show called?
Sway in the morning.
Sway in the morning. Thank you. Fucking most obvious thing in the world. I remember him being on Sway in the morning about a year and a half ago, right? And it was actually right before COVID had kind of shut everything down. And they brought up Devin Haney. And in the interview, Sway asked him about Devin Haney. Devin Haney name was popping and buzzing at that point. A lot of people wanted to see the Loma fight. This is before T.O. and Loma and all that stuff. Anyway, he said, Devin's going to be one of the greats. I'm going to be one of the greats. That fight between us not only will happen, but it'll be one of the biggest fights of all time, for this era. And I had zero reason to doubt him. I heard him say it, and I realized he knows exactly who he was going to fight. He knows this sport very well. He knows who the likelihood of the fighters that are going to be around at the end. And him and Shakur, Devin Haney and Shakur have a date with destiny one day. They do. I don't think it's at 135, and I don't think it has to be. I understand your point, and I want it as a fan, but I look at the nature of 135 and what it means to suggest that Devin Haney, a fighter who's campaigned for years to try to get undisputed, who worked and sacrificed and tried and came back from injury early, even when doctors said he shouldn't, which is something most people didn't know. All these things that he did to, work his career forward, and the powers that be in boxing, what did they do? They held him back. Now he's at a point where I don't know how well he makes the weight class. He says he makes it pretty good. I'm sure he, that I don't think that's cap. At the same time, that can't be the case forever. So I'm going to hold him to this standard that Shakur, who's barely coming into the weight class, and he himself could have moved up a little bit ago too, if he really wanted to, knowing that some of those fights that he really wanted weren't going to ever really happen. So then you put him in this position. I don't mind watching Shakur, thin out, body wise, and see Devin Haney, who looks to be almost thinned out, match it at a weight that's more comfortable and more natural, and probably in a position where it's more devastating and we get a better chance for a knockout in a fight that I don't think is really knockout oriented. So I love it. The one thing I do want to say real quick before you burn, Frank Martin, they're talking.
There
Shakur
we
wants to
go.
fight him. Listen to me. There are two people in boxing in 2022 that raise the stakes more than anything else. And you want to give Bivol, or you want to give Spence, or whoever you want to give fighter of the year, two fighters of the year that raised their profile, Bam Rodriguez and Frank Martin. And Frank Martin did it with one of the last fucking events of the year. Frank Martin showed up and showed out. He's a player, maybe not financially, but at this point, if anybody's going to give him a chance, it's a dangerous thing to do. I would respect Shakur so much if he were to take that Frank Martin fight, because there's no reason he has to.
And listen, Frank Martin, I mean, it's no coincidence you picked two Texas guys, but that's cool, They just happen to be
from Detroit, though. Frank's actually from
Frank's
originally.
from Detroit.
He's
Okay.
born in Detroit, but he lives in Texas.
Well, I guess both states get to claim him, but I think his position now, he's coming in like Tony Montana. And he's like, fuck that food truck, man. I want to make some real money out here. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, he threw that hairnet at fucking,
yeah, man.
At what's his name? At Showtime Espinosa. He's like, bro, I don't need this shit. I want the real deal. Because that was a big win. That was a good win. Listen to me. He beat a Dominican that I really think is going to be, or could be, a problem for a lot of other fighters. It was a high level win at this stage in his career. You could say it's a better win than a lot of the wins that Shakur has on his record. You know what I mean? Based on context. So, yeah, it's a big fight, I think.
Well, let's stay in Texas for a minute. And I want to talk about what seems to be or not seem to be going on at 160. And we're talking about Jermall Charlo. We seen him go and approach Bivol. Not really sure that makes much sense, because you're like skipping over 168. Now we got Boo Boo on that side of the street. Who is that? Demetrius Andrade. What? I mean, even if you can tell me just from being closer to Texas, what do you see happen? Is he going to stay at 160 forever? Is he moving up? What do you think happens?
So, that for years I covered the sport. And even though I don't cover it journalistically, I don't even know if that's a word. I'm still very much in touch with a lot of the sources I had, people close to certain camps, promotions, or whatever. And there's a lot of rumblings. And for the first time, I'm hearing these rumblings from sides that aren't connected, and it makes me think they're true. Not that it makes me think it's true, but it gives it more validity. And I'll explain. What people are saying, and the rumor is that the whole Mel, coming out or getting hurt, puts him in a position where he's either going to fight Tim Tszyu or completely vacate and move up to 160. There is this idea that PBC is planning a mass exodus, or not mass, but an exodus from these divisions 154 through 168. And from what it seems, it's like they're thinking that Mel is going to go on to 160. Maul is going to go on to 168, and he's going to have that fight with Boo Boo. And at the end of the day, the only other fight with Benavidez in that position gives Maul exactly what he needs. For Mel on the other side, it gives him the opportunity to have some fresh opponents. This is a guy who was fighting with the same 154-pound class over the last half a decade, and yes, Tim Tszyu kind of new, and it presents an interesting match. But for a guy who has been at 154 his entire career, I have no issues with him moving up, Maul moving up, all these guys moving up. What I can tell you, though, that is for certain, is Maul is starting to really feel the fire. He is talking in private and in public more about fighting Boo Boo and the winner of Benavidez Plant than he's ever spoken about in his career. I can promise you that he has very serious intentions on making that fight happen. But what he does, I think, is directly connected to Spence, who they say is also going to move up to 154. So I should have said 147 to 168. And basically everybody makes a shift up. Does that happen? Is the Tim Tszyu fight evidence of this master plan that's being orchestrated in 2023? I don't know. I don't know. And here's the thing: even if it is, great, awesome, I love it. Let's do it. You know what I mean? Spence at 154, great. If he's not going to fight Crawford, let's do it. If Mel's not going to, defend the belts, give the other guys that are there opportunities to win it and go up and try to conquer 160. And if you're stale and your name is Maul and you haven't really gotten a big fight, 168 is a perfect place to get that done.
Definitely. And I asked this rhetorically before we move on, then it becomes, what are we waiting on? I'd love to see Jermell Charlo. He's one dispute at 154. Maybe there's a fight with Eubank in the horizon for either of the Charlo brothers. You get what I'm saying? Lots of work out there. What the winner or loser, or Caleb Plant and Benavidez is still skin in the game, because they'll be
100%.
They'll be introducing whoever to that division. So you know what I'm saying? So it's tons of great fights.
And to add real quick to your point, how much better it, like, everybody talked about Benavidez and Plant, how it was a wasted fight and it didn't happen and blah, blah, blah. Imagine that fight taking place when we wanted it, right? And it happening. I could very well see the loser of that fight kind of being forgotten. Now you have a David Benavidez that's fighting a Plant who's has the Canelo recognition. So if you're David Benavidez, you beat the guy that was in there with Canelo. If you're Plant, you beat Benavidez, who was the biggest next fighter to fight Canelo in the fans' eyes. That gives you all the clout to return and maybe even see a rematch. Like, both guys have so much more at stake, and it's because he was in the ring with Canelo. The loss actually makes this fight, puts more at stake. You know what I'm saying? So beautiful.
Great point, man. Great point. Now we're going to move into women's boxing before we get to my little feature. Hot. This is your girl. You put me on to her. Super bad. Senicia Estrada. You put me on. I can give you credit for that, brother. She's in there against Tina Rupchert. I don't want to ruin her name, but she's in there against Tina Rupchert. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you see how we had to go through all of that to sort what's happening with the men's.
Yes.
The women, every fight is either a unification or undisputed or something of significance. So here we got the unification between Rupchert and Estrada. And then you also have a bout for Michaela Maya and Christina oh God, I don't want to kill her last name. Help me out with this one.
Man, I'm going to say Lina Datao.
Yeah, Lina Datao. She's Dominican, though, but she moved out to Greece. Interesting combination.
That is very interesting.
What's also interesting, she's the lone person that has a win over Alicia Bumgarner.
Yeah. That makes all this very, very interesting. And I think the point you're making, macro sense is, you have women just ready to get it on, dude. And that's just the best aspect of boxing when it happens. And the pessimist will say, well, there's nobody in the divisions. Oh, women, it's so thin. And dude, you could look at it that way. That's fine. But all I know is those are world champions.
And
those
that's
are
why
the best women in those weight classes.
Absolutely. And not to cut you off, brother, but that's why they move up and down. To go back to Tina Rupchert.
Yes,
she's one that has a win over my girl. I love her to death right now. Yocasta Valle. She's from Nicaragua by way of Costa Rica, or however you say that. But again, she just went up and unified, went up a division. So these women, their losses are only to the other great fighters.
Exactly, other great fighters. Yep.
So
you also have Amanda Serrano, who's going to fight Erica Cruz on February 4th in New York, Madison Square Garden, for the undisputed world featherweight title. Like, this is crazy. Women are really making an effort, and they're really, really trying to take it to the hole. And I applaud them for it. For real.
Now, hold up. Alicia Bumgarner is on the undercard of that, unifying against Mikad, right?
Mikad.
So it's
Mikalad.
Mikalad. Bro, women's boxing. This is why it's easy to be a fan of it. All you got to do is pay attention. It's like thrifting. My wife loves thrifting. You take your time to go through and you'll find some really, really, really good stuff.
Hell yeah.
Invaluable, man. And so, speaking of which, let me get to my Women's Boxing Wednesday feature, because I have a young lady who you don't really need to thrift in that way, if I'm using that analogy, but she did come through the Olympic system. I'm talking about Beatriz Ferreira. She is a Brazilian fighter. Her first, her debut, she went 3-minute rounds. Let me start there.
That's
okay?
crazy.
Pushing the boundaries of what is supposed to happen in women's boxing. Yeah, man, she is a complete monster. She's only 2-0. And again, they move women along so fast. She's in a lightweight division. Who's in the lightweight division? You got the Katie Taylors of the world. You got to, I mean, it's so deep. And again, these fighters move up. So it's not a matter of who's in the division, but I have to put this out because I love the way she's being moved. I love her intensity, and I love the way she's able to transition. She's showing some beautiful promise transitioning from the amateur style to a more pro-friendly style. She's very decorated, a silver world championships
medalist, right?
Yeah, man. So
yeah, I think that, she's like a little older, and it's like you could, like, everybody would always make the, point, oh, an older fighter, they're not gonna have much left in the tank, blah blah whatever. But it seems like in the women's division, a lot of the women that are older, it's like they're not worn down because they don't get as many fights, and you know what I'm saying. So
sure.
I really don't think that that's like a knock against her. And on top of that, she seems to carry muscle fairly well, that maybe she could move up and move down. I guess that's something we'll have to see. Because like you said, she only has 2 fights, right?
Only 2 fights.
Yeah. So, and she's with Matchroom. Yeah.
Who
So
does amazing with women's boxing.
Exactly. And that's I think biggest takeaway there is, what can they do? How can they market her? How can they build her up? If anyone can, I think Matchroom can.
Shout out to Eduardo Hearn. He's going to do it for us, baby.
Let's do it.
Now, we're going to jump into a little bit of a fight week preview. Let's start with some of the undercard or the features on there. Rashidi Ellis made his exodus from Golden Boy.
Yeah.
He's making his debut. He's in welterweight division action. And, let's just move right into it. Boots Ennis is on there. And Rashidi's talked about fighting Boots.
Yeah.
I want to know, what do you think of these guys, a potential matchup in the future? And what do you expect from either fighter this weekend?
Yeah, listen, first of all, I think that Boots and Rashidi is a good fight. I like the fight. I think it makes sense in a lot of ways. First of all, I'm just happy for Rashidi. He's a guy who we know, we've known him for a long time. We've interviewed him. We know his coaches. We're very familiar with his camp and seeing him, come up through the system. I always felt like he was so undervalued in the Golden Boy era, or in his Golden Boy portion of his promotion. And so I think that his move, first and foremost, is positive because he's getting fights. Yeah, you could blame COVID a little bit, but he had 1 fight in 2019 against Eddie Gomez. Came back, fought Alexis Roja, which, that's a good fight. These are 2 good, decent little fights, but it's like 2 fights in 3 years. That's what he had. 2 fights in 3 years almost. Comes back in July of 2022, and he's 24-0 with 15 knockouts. Got a great smile, great physique. There's a lot to like about him. There's a lot to be excited about him. And for a guy in Boots who does not seem to be getting the fights, and doesn't seem like anybody's going to step up and fight him and take on that monster of a challenge, here is Rashidi Ellis, who's begging to get the fight, wanting absolutely to test himself and get that opportunity. And so with Ennis and him both on the undercard, I really think that it's going to be a great opportunity to kind of sow the seeds for this future matchup.
Absolutely. And Rashidi, he's kind of like Wiz Khalifa in that when he came in with the freshman class, he was not a freshman. So
Yes.
Rashidi is
Good.
kind of
Good. Love
getting a
it.
chance but he's not of this era. Like, he's been around for a while. It's just that he hasn't had the momentum that he needed. Now, great opportunities. I'm looking to see him shine. And of course, Boots Ennis, everybody has their eyes on what happens next with Boots.
Of course.
Real quick, I want to ask you, because I've been beating this drum. I said I was going to do it all 2023. Do you see, and especially given what you said, do you see the likelihood of a Boots Ennis versus Terrence Crawford fight before Crawford and Spence happens at 147?
No, because I do think that if the Spence fight with Crawford, and this is what I've heard from different people who've talked to his team, if that Spence fight does not materialize, not only if it does not materialize, but if it doesn't come together fairly smoother than the first attempt or the last attempt,
He's moving up.
He's moving up 100%. He already has a couple fights in mind.
Wow.
They already have like a semi plan of what they'd want to do as far as 154 is concerned. I mean, this guy, listen, from what I understand, Terrence Crawford is as methodical outside the ring as he is in, and he has plans and he has goals. And so if Spence isn't in that, he's moving up, I think 100%.
And Boo Boo Andrade's on there, another guy
Yes.
similar
I'm
to
excited
Rashidi Ellis, right? Tell me why. Tell us why we need to be excited.
Well, first and foremost, I'm excited because he has not fought since November of 2021, which is a fucking travesty. Now, I know that there were injuries. I know that there were other aspects. He actually has some other things going on in the background. Most people don't know. It's like movie stuff going on and stuff that he hasn't really, he has announced, but he hasn't. But anyway, I'm excited because I know Demon and Nicholson. We've had him on the show. We used to have him on TVV all the time. Nicholson is a very fun fighter. He's a guy who's he packs a really good punch. I mean, he has 22 knockouts in his 26 fights. 26. And that's a 70% KO percentage. So, that's really good. That's fun. He's beaten guys like he fought guys on my bad, like Edgar Berlanga. But he's been in the ring with a few guys. Nothing really like stands out other than like your Jesse Harts. Like everybody that he's fought that has a name, he's lost to pretty much, right? But that's the point with this. I think it's getting Andre back into the mix, getting him fighting. You put him in a position where hopefully this kicks off a big 2023 where we do see the Charlo fight him. And I think it's going to happen. I really do. I think that Boo Boo gets that fight this year because they both want it from what I understand.
No, definitely, man. I want to see Boo Boo win big, man. I'm
So do
definitely
I.
I'm excited, and I hope the division opens up and also he's able to build that market here on the East Coast and even wider than that. So they got him in DC. He's a New England guy right out of Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah,
So
hell yeah.
now the main event,
Yeah.
Tank Davis, Hector Garcia. Break it down for me, champ.
Listen, I am not going to sit here and try to make a point for why I think Hector Garcia is going to win or any sort of things like that. Garcia presents really not much to me in the way of Tank. And this isn't like all about him being a bad fighter or anything like that. I don't think he's a bad fighter at all. I think Tank is special. I think he's a very special fighter. And I think when special fighters like Canelo, like Roy Jones, like Mayweather, when they have a mission in front of them, they are taking care of it. So there is like No. Well, you got to watch this fight, King. You know why, King? Because, they got that Ryan Garcia. That's who he's focused on, King. He ain't even worried about, nah, fuck that. Tank is right now got this guy locked in. He is not sitting here thinking, yeah, man, what's that Ryan fight going to be like? Man, you know what? How am I going to come? Oh, you know what? Let's design my clothes. Oh, what entrance? Yo, who should we get to walk us out? No. Bullshit. Cap. Whatever happened with him and his girl was the most time that he has been his mind taken away from the fight. This specific fight. Now, I'm not going to pretend like he doesn't realize and understand the magnitude of it. And that right there lies the question of why watch this fight. Why watch this fight? Well, why watch Avengers Infinity Wars? Why watch Iron Man 1? Why watch the first Batman and Dark Knight, but not Dark Knight Rises? Like, this is the part 3 or 4 of an epic 5, potentially 7-part movie that is Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Tank Davis. And this is another superhero movie that we are getting on Saturday, and it is meant to be viewed as a package. What is Tank able to do from the moment that he fought Pitbull to the moment he fights Ryan Garcia? And everything in between matters. Everything in between counts. If you are a fight fan and you've been a fight fan, you know that these are the moments that lead up to the greatness. And when you get that excitement, it's because you've been following and you've been watching and you've seen that these guys could have lost to these professionals, but they kept going, they kept striving, and they fought the best each other. That's what matters. And that's why you got to support Tank this weekend. Doesn't matter what the fuck you think. And by the way, say what you want. The undercard, that's a lot of deep, pretty good fighters. Look like a USC card from back in the day, right?
And that was my point. Forget about all the other shit, what you think, what you read, the opportunities that his name and his ability has allowed for the other guys like Rashidi and create these openings. Respect that. Also respect his opponent. Don't be fooled. Hector Garcia, yes, he's being brought up, but he's a champion. And the way he came up, he fought his way to that position. So you're looking at a guy that's going to be playing with house money. He don't give a fuck.
I like that. Yo, let me ask you a question. Okay. So his big win, even though I think beating Roger Gutierrez is no, nothing to joke about. His big win is Colbert, right? Okay. So Lil B Hop is a good fighter. I like him a lot. But I feel like some of the detractors for Tank or some of the people that think that Garcia has a chance hold on to that win and value it a little more than I think I would or I do. And we'll put it this way. Jamel Herring is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I respect him more than I respect mostly everybody I've ever met within the boxing industry. That said, Shakur's win over him, what does it represent, right? Like, just in context, what does it represent? So then whatever it represents, let's go look at the Colbert fight and what that represents as a win on Garcia's resume. I don't even think that it's as good a win as Herring. In fact, I know it's not. So if it's not as good a win as Herring, I don't see how you can use it as the precipice for why you think that this guy's beating Tank. Because you know what? Simply put, Lil B Hop, I love him. He's great, but he's no Tank, and he never was.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've concluded the championship rounds. You see why I love working with this guy, Mario Munguia. Go find him on Twitter and Instagram. King Amin Of Essex, ladies and gentlemen. We out of here.
Peace.